You're listening to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, Singles Talk Radio channel, where we take a lighthearted and candid approach to discussions on the journey of relationship loss, divorce, parenting, being single, relationships building, dating, and yes, sex. Join our listeners and begin living your best life.
And welcome, everybody. Welcome to this very special edition of Business Insight. My name is Bruce Starr, and I've been a TV and radio talk show host for 20 years, and I've had some absolutely fascinating guests on my show. And today is going to be one of those very, very special shows because my guest on today's show, well, I'll tell you, there isn't a child now 50 to 65 years of age, who lived in the New York metropolitan area, that doesn't know, love, and adore Sonny Fox. Sonny is an amazing guy for many reasons. Let me tell you a little bit more about Sonny, things that you might not know or realize about him. He was a true pioneer of children's educational TV. He was the host of the first weekly CBS TV live series. He was the MC of the $64,000 challenge, the producer of movies for television, specials for PBS, VP of children's programming at NBC TV, chair of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and perhaps what he was most known for, the way you and I would know him, was that he was the host of a 4-hour children's programming on Saturday morning called Wonderama, a show that set a very high standard for how to deal with children and young viewers. He was the pioneer. And those young viewers are now us, especially those listening to this show. Another amazing thing about Sonny Fox, which absolutely just shocked me when I read his book, but you made the front page that he just wrote in 2012, Sonny Fox not only was in World War II, but he was a captured soldier, and he was a prisoner of war. And Sonny, I'm gonna let you talk about some of these incredible experiences you've had. I want to officially welcome you to the show. It's an honor to have you, Sonny Fox.
Thank you, Bruce. And I actually would like you to keep talking. I'm enjoying listening to you talking about me immensely. I feel like I'm probably in a beer next to you ready for my burial. That's the kind of speech you get when you're interring people in the ground, usually. But thank you anyway for those glowing remarks.
Well,
Anyway, I'm delighted to be here, and I don't even know where to start. You know what? Let me start with the title. Why is the title of the book called But You Made the Front Page? And I'll tell you the story. It's in the book, but I'll tell it to those of you who obviously have not read the book. When I was the vice president of children's programming at NBC, there was a decision by NBC Inc. that they had to, because of financial constraints, they had to get rid of 300 positions. And in their infinite wisdom, they decided that they really didn't need a vice president of children's programming. It wasn't that important. And so I got a notice that 6 weeks hence I was no longer going to be vice president of children's programming. Anyway, New York Post got the story about the NBC decision, and the day after I was informed, I was at my desk looking at the headline of the New York Post, which took up the whole front page pretty much in bold letters, Bloodbath at NBC. And then in smaller print, followed the names of some of the more prominent members of the staff that had gotten the axe. And there was only room on the front page for one name before the rest were on a carryover page. And that was me. And I'm looking balefully at this newspaper when the secretary comes and says, your mother's on the phone. I pick up the phone. Hi, Gert, what? She says, congratulations. I said, what? She said, I'm reading the front page of the New York Post. I said, Ma, it says I got fired. And then she said, yeah, but you made the front page. Now, what did she do with that clip? Now, that was Mom. But what did she do that, that so made it, made the point that I wanted to make in the book, that I put it on the cover? She took a negative and flipped it into a positive. The negative, I got fired. Yeah, but you made the front page. So she took something out of it that gave it a positive feed. And as a leitmotif in the book, the idea that one can fail without being a failure. One has to learn to do that if one is going to take risks. And I'm always a risk taker, as you can read in my book or learn from my conversation today. You open the door, I'm going to walk through it. I don't know what's on the other side, maybe a trap door, but whatever it is, I'm going to do it because I'm going to find out things I never would have found out if I was cautious. So, yeah, I'll go boldly there. How did I get to be in children's television in the first place? I came back from a stint as a correspondent covering the Korean War back in the 50s for the Voice of America. And I got married over there, and then I quit, and then we came back around the long way home for months. We had a wonderful time throughout Asia and the Near East and Europe. Got home, and I needed a job. And at that point, educational television was just starting up. The first stations weren't even on the air yet. And one of the pioneer stations was going to be in St. Louis, Channel 9. And they were looking for somebody to host and perform a children's series, daily children's series, on Channel 9 on a station that was not yet on the air. And a friend of mine at the VOA said, hey, look at this came in, you want to look? So I sent them a letter. Did I want to be on television? No. Was I thinking of myself as a performer? Not particularly. And was I interested in children's television at that time? No. But I needed a job. So I sent them the letter, and they said, well, come out, we'll give you an audition. And I sent them a letter, in all honesty, saying, I don't have enough money to fly out, which you would think would have killed it. But they said, well, we'll split the bill with you. We'll split the fare. So I flew out, and I auditioned in this girls' gymnasium that was converted into a television studio by the very fact that they put plywood on the windows. That made it a television studio, and some lights. And when it was over, my audition was over, the guy who was in charge, Dick Hartzell, took me up to the restaurant upstairs. It was on Washington University campus. And he said, well, we've had a lot of people try out for this show, and pretty much all of them have been smoother and glibber than you. I said, why am I not surprised, He said, but whatever it is you're going to become, I think it's just at the beginning of it. So if you want the show, it's yours.
Wow.
$125 a week. $125 a week, 5 45-minute shows that I had to produce and perform hosting. Now,
wow.
I had no idea what was possible. I had no idea what television could do. I had no idea with the limited production budget we had what I could produce. I had no idea. And I said, what do you want? They said, we want 45 minutes. That was it. Nobody knew what we wanted. We were starting out. I got a space. I got 3 cameras or 2 cameras, whatever it was, and I got 1 assistant. And that was it. And I was thrown out there and, do it. So we did it. And 6 months later, the phone rang, and it was CBS saying, we're going to start a new series in the spring. Would you like to host it? How they even found out I was out there is another whole story that's in the book. But, okay, so here I am taking the plunge, going into children's television, totally unequipped, totally inexperienced, which probably worked for me, by the way. And then the CBS thing comes up, and I'm saying, sure, why not? Network, live, sure. every week. And that worked. So now, not everything I did worked, and we'll get the $64,000 challenge a little later, but I took those risks. And it helps to have chutzpah, by the way. You know the word?
Yes.
Who in New York doesn't know the word chutzpah? For those of you who are in Clearwater, Arkansas, or whatever, and you don't
or St. Louis.
No, they all know chutzpah there. But chutzpah is, steely brass. When I got to St. Louis, I found out that it was the second year they were assembling this great new American sports car known as the Corvette in St. Louis. So I pick up the phone and I call the head of whatever that was, part of it. I said, okay, here's the deal. Now, this is me calling from a station that was not yet on the air, an educational station that would have no commercials, an educational station that nobody even had seen yet in terms of its being on the air in this country, and a show that was being done for kids between the ages of 6 and 12 that probably would get a rating slightly higher than the test pattern. That's me. That was my body. That was the strength from which I was operating. I said, here's the deal. You give me a Corvette free for a year, and I'll feature it on the show in the opening. And I'll be driving in your Corvette. It was called the Finder. I'm going out and finding things. I'm going to find things in your car. Now, that's chutzpah. Now, I'll teach you another Yiddish word called putz. He said yes. And so for a year, I had this magnificent car.
Wow.
And I was tooling around. Yeah, you were going to say something. I will shut up.
Well, Sonny, I want people to get to know, that kid that had a hard time with girls back in Brooklyn a little bit. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, God, the loser wimp. Erwin Sonny, the wimp. Just think of my real first name, Erwin. I mean, that's a loser name right there. Put a little kid in 3 weeks old in swaddling clothes in the crib and two parents hanging over and looking down. Hi, little Erwin doesn't come out. And what he shortened Erwin to yeah. So they started calling me Sonny Boy. So the name became Sonny. But I was a skinny kid, and my mother. My older sister, firstborn, was very smart, and she kept getting skipped ahead in class to upper grades without finishing 3 times. My mother decided I would follow in her footsteps, though I was not a good student and didn't care that much. And so she also would get calls from the principal's office, come down here. Your son is not doing the work we think he is capable of doing. She said, of course, he's bored. Move him ahead. And they did. Between 3rd and 5th grade, 3 times. Now I was not only in a class I had no idea about long addition or girls, I was a year and a half younger than everybody around me. Now think of the games we played on the streets all the time and all the stuff that was going on. A year and a half when you're 9 and a half and everybody else is 11 is a profound difference. So when they chose up teams for the sports on the street, I was always picked last. I couldn't hit 2 swords. I probably couldn't even hit 1 sword, to tell you the truth, and stickball. And everything seemed to me to not be working, to the point where when I was about 11, I'll show you how inept I really was. I tried to commit suicide twice and couldn't even do that. So it was really not until I got in the Army, really, and went through the rigors of training and battle and the POW experience, that I really found out what my strengths were and what I was capable of and how I could look around and understood that I was doing better than most of the guys there. That gave me the confidence, that gave me the ability to take the chances, to take the risks that I have taken all my life.
Yes, unbelievable, Sonny. And to read your book, and we talked about this yesterday when we spoke, to read your book and to all of a sudden come to a part in the book where it says that you were not only, fighting the war inside of Germany lines, but that through one situation or another, you actually were captured and were then taken on a horrendous trip to wherever you were sent to, and I just want you to touch about that for a second. And you were a prisoner of war, not for a day or a week or a month. Could you? I know we weren't going to talk too much about it.
But okay, so here's the thing about that concept. Two things happened. One is we ended up in first of all, we went the trip to the first prison camp was on a boxcar, and we were locked into it. And then we were in that boxcar for 7 days and 7 nights with no food, no water.
Gracious.
And I know the Germans didn't mean that to happen, probably, but prisoners of war toward the end of the war were low freight. We were in the Bulge, so this was December of '44. I was captured in the Battle of the Bulge. But the fact that as we were on there for 7 days, 7 nights, that is tough to be in a cold, dark freight car with too many guys. In World War I, they used to call them 40 and 8. Either 40 men or 8 horses would fit in. We were 75, and so there was not enough room for everybody even to lie down in there. And cold, very, very cold. The rime of frost was on the walls, and only tiny little pieces of light came in, only a few hours a day at that time of the winter. So it was tough. It was really tough. Then you get off at the first prison camp, and all you want to do is get inside, get warm. And the next thing you know, you're being checked in with German efficiency by clerks. And I happened to know an American clerk who had previously been there, and they put him up to be the clerk, one of the clerks. Most of them were Germans, few were Americans. I got an American. Another intercession that saved my life in a way, because it was the only prison camp in Germany up till that time that separated Jewish GIs from other GIs, and it was a story that was not told for decades until Charlie Guggenheim did a wonderful documentary on it, Soldiers of Another War, I think it was called. Anyway, in the early 2000s, and it's a really good documentary. And then Roger Cohen, who was a columnist in the New York Times, did a book on it. Soldier slaves, because what they did is they sent the Jews that they separated off to a salt mine where they worked as slave laborers, and many of them died. I lucked out on that because when the guy asked me, father's name, I said, I gave you a name, I can see on them. But he says, hey, kid, you're going to stand in the snow out there until you answer it. That didn't seem like a good idea. So I said, okay, I get my father's name, and he was a textile converter, fine. I didn't think that was going to lose or win the war. Then they got to the question I never thought I was going to hear, which was religion. Now, here's this 19-year-old gangly, very cold, hungry kid standing outside of a Nazi prison camp in the cold snow, and logically, you wouldn't say what I said, but I said Jewish. Why did I say Jewish? I don't know. Maybe because having surrendered once, I didn't want to do it again, and I just didn't want to deny it. I don't give a shit where I was. Excuse the language. And then he said Protestant, and I said Jewish, and he said Protestant, and that was the end of the conversation. I went in, and I never thought it meant anything. I didn't know what he put down. And 2 weeks later, they came through, and what they did is if anybody said Jewish, they hauled them off to a different barracks, isolating them from the other GIs. Since I was not apparently Jewish, and the name Fox didn't see, I was left alone.
Wow.
And ultimately, they moved the non-coms, non-commissioned officers, corporals, and sergeants. I was a sergeant. They moved us to another camp. And they took all the Jewish non-coms along with us. So eventually, even if I had said Jewish, I would have been reunited and gone to the second prison camp, where they tried it again. Only this time, there was I learned later from a friend of mine who was in the same camp that a master sergeant, who was the ranking member of our group, so he sort of became the spokesman, said we're all Jewish in effect. And he said, you have to take all of us if you take one of us. And according to my friend's sworn testimony on this, the German put a gun to his head and threatened to shoot him, and he said, I don't care. And finally took it down, and they didn't bother us. They left us alone. So not my heroism, but the heroism of him saved us from any further. The rest of that story is simply how one can learn and take away from an experience, no matter how bad, one can learn so much about. I learned about how a whole new set of formation of a society within prison camp set itself up. It's rank, forget rank. Other things came through that made the hierarchy work inside the prison camp. So you learn about the need for organization that really is intensely human, and that changes under the circumstances. You're a civilian. That's one set. You go into the army. It's defined by your rank. You get into a prison camp, although it's supposed to the rank's supposed to still obtain. Forget it. It falls apart, and a new societal hierarchy emerges. So. Within that context, I became very active, and that it was an annealing experience. Let's put it that way. So that when I came out of that and came out of the war, it would take a lot to frighten me. You could put a gun to my head, or if you were really big and muscular, I would get a little afraid of the whacking I would get. But if you're going to try to cow me in some way, that wasn't going to work after that. So you learn about your own experience, your own capacities at this point. So
that's unbelievable, Sonny. Yeah, that's unbelievable. Sonny, there is a caller. Do you want to take a call? There is someone hanging on. That
Absolutely.
Maybe they want to.
Sure.
Yeah, you want? We'll give them a shot.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Hello, caller. Are you there? Okay. I'm just going to give him another second to respond. Are you there, caller?
Oh, me?
Okay. Yes. Did you have a question for Sonny Fox?
Me? Are you talking to me in Tel Aviv?
Yes, I am. Do you have a question for Sonny?
Yes. Well, it's not a question. It's a statement. I just want to say how much your show meant to me when I was a girl living in the Bronx. I mean, it was wonderful. Here I was watching this show, this Jewish girl in the Bronx, with a Jewish narrator who even did a show from Israel for Israel's 13th birthday, bar mitzvah, and here I am in Tel Aviv talking, and I just think you're wonderful, Sonny, and I adore you, and I'm going to go and get your book now.
Thank you, my sweet. Isn't that funny? Yes, I was in Israel. I was invited by the Israeli government to come over, and it was on the 13th year, the Bar Mitzvah year. That's exactly right. My God. You know what's remarkable? How vividly the kids who are now, her age, the kids, your age, how you all remember so vividly. Not that I remember, that's flattering, but the way you remember everything about the program is so vivid, is really remarkable, and it shows you how important it is to think about what you're doing for kids, because it registers, it stays with them, and I have so many evidences of that in the decades since. I mean, while I was on the air, we knew the show was getting big numbers. We knew we were popular. We knew everybody wanted to be on the show. What we didn't know then, and I only got to know in the decades subsequently, is how much that stayed with you and the others, and how much it's still at this moment, reaching back over 50 years today, you and I talking, how connected we still are.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And, I've had, when I told everybody on Facebook that I was going to have you on the show, I mean, I had an avalanche of people telling you, they want me to ask you, was there ever a key that unlocked that toy trunk, Sonny?
Yeah, we gave away a lot of prizes on that, the mystery chest. Yes. It was, and we would stop the show whenever they did that, and we'd stop them from doing it while we cut the commercials or something. But we wanted, if it was going to be open, we wanted to be live on the air. So we gave away matter of fact, that's what kids remember about. That was the Saturday show. By the way, you told everybody Wonder Woman was on Saturday at the introduction. That was on Sunday, actually.
Oh,
so I will make a little edit on your intro.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I was always amused listening later to all. Matter of fact, one of the two guys who started the sitcom 2.5 Men, which plays on television here, big hit, Lee Aronson, came to me at an event at the Academy we had, and was so excited to see him because he had been on the show when he was 12. and had wanted to win the prizes. That's why he got on the show, you know. He didn't care about anything. He wanted those prizes. So, and kids, we play Simon Says every week. And they'd start with 75 kids, and you would end up with a winner who would get big prizes, including a bicycle. And I was out here, and when I moved out here in 78, about 79, I was having lunch. I was producing. I had my own company at that point, my own company. And I was meeting with an agent, and she told me that there was an agent in her agency who had been on the show, had won a bicycle by winning Simon Says, but he felt he was still feeling guilty about it because he had cheated and I hadn't spotted it. I said, very good, give me his name. She said, well, it's, what was it, some Wayne. Let's call it Paul Wayne. But he said, it was Weintraub while he was on your show. He came out here and changed it to Wayne. I said, even better, give me his phone number. So a few days later, I called him and I said, Paul Wayne, please. And then there was this moment of silence, and then this voice got on, hello? Who's calling? I said, tell him Sonny Fox is calling. Then he gets on, and there's a hello with 100 question marks after his hello. And I said, Mr. Wayne, why don't you do a show in New York? And we're now doing a retrospective, and we're going through tapes of the shows that we did in the years past. And we stumbled on a very troubling thing. We found that you won a bicycle playing Simon Says, and we discovered that you had cheated. And he starts to laugh. I said, you think this is funny, Mr. Wayne. We take this very seriously. And not only did you meet to cover your tracks, not only did you move from New York to California, but you changed your name from Weintraub to Wayne, didn't you? Now he's on the floor laughing. And I said, I'm calling to tell you, even though you built your whole life on a lie, you can keep the goddamn bike.
Let me tell you, Sonny, the show had an effect on the same lady who called, by the way, from Tel Aviv, Israel. She called all the way in from Tel Aviv to
I
speak to you.
understand that.
She said, I wrote letter after letter asking for a ticket to Wonderama and never got one.
She didn't know my mother. If she'd known my mother,
there you go.
My mother, every Monday I'd walk in, there'd be a letter in her inimitable handwriting, and you'd open it and say, the following 5 children must get tickets, and I always give it to my sister. Okay, give them tickets. So the best way to get on it was if you got to know my mom.
And Ann wrote 4 hours on Sunday morning. There it is right there. Loved every minute. I always enjoyed the tongue twisters. And Bob Hamislaw, who I went to school with at Roosevelt High School in Yonkers, said to ask Sonny, what do you call a bird that breaks the law?
A jaybird.
So you were the king of the kids.
Well, we put out 3 joke books, as a matter of fact, which did very, very well because of that. But I loved the kids telling jokes because, first of all, this all started. I see Wonderama worked in a unique way for a couple of reasons. I had 4 hours to fill. I had no production budget. And I have no performing talent that you'd want to see. I mean, I don't dance, I don't sing, I don't do puppets, right? I don't do magic. I don't, So I know. So, well, how do you fill 4 bloody hours? And then it took me a while to realize the only asset I really had were the kids in the studio. So they, for instance, when Chuck McCann or Sandy Becker or Soupy Sales did a show, the kids were the audiences, and the kids loved them, and properly so. They were the audience. They performed. In my show, the kids were the show, and that's how we built up a unique relationship. Because out of the very necessity of filling 4 hours, my only asset that I started with was my interest in them, because I loved poking around in their minds to see where they would take me. Because kids, let me give this message to everyone listening who has kids or grandkids. I know you're good at being parents and good at grandparents. You love your kids, you love your grandparents. What we don't do enough of is listening to the kids, listening to the kids. We don't listen to each other anymore, but we really should listen to the kids because they are very special creatures. They have a slightly gothic quality about them. Isaac Basheva's singer has a wonderful, I meant to bring it out before I did this phone thing. It's something about they still believe in punctuation, goblins, witches, devils, etc., and all that other old-fashioned stuff. It's true. Kids, when they're growing up, still listen to the voices in the dark, and they still believe in witches and goblins. Why not? They grow up with magic all over them in all the fairy tales that they read and fantasies they have. But their interior lives are so rich that if you stop and listen and not be judgmental on what comes back, you can get in there sometimes and hear the most remarkable things. Talking to kids about religion, for instance, what does God look like? Most kids believe in God. Okay, what does God look like? Now, kids do not deal in abstracts, so they have to have a very specific image of God. And they'll tell you how tall he is. They'll tell you what color his beard is, where he lived. The whole thing will come out very, very specific. I remember doing the side of a record album I did back in the 60s, and one half of it was children and religion. And you hear a voice when they say, how tall is God? And you hear this one voice say, 5'8.5", and behind them you hear another voice, 5'11". You know, that's how specific they are. But then you say, okay, well, what does God look like? And then this little girl, 8.5-year-old girl, I was doing a pilot for Fox on the show, and she said, I don't know what it looks like, but I see him every afternoon. I said, you see him every afternoon in your mind? No, in my bedroom. Well, I mean, is this alien? She says, no, I see him in heaven. Now, here's this perfectly fine, cute, adorable 8.5-year-old young lady. And she is telling me about, she goes up to heaven every afternoon and plays with her dead grandmother. What does her grandma look like? She described, I said, what does heaven look like? She described that too. And what do you do with her? And they told her, I said, anybody else up there? She said, oh yeah, the Fergusons are up there. You'll be happy to know the Fergusons made it, by the way. The Fergusons are up there. And here was this young girl had chosen her dead grandmother to be her doppelganger. It's a conversation I can almost guarantee you she never had with her mother, because you have to be able to let the silences hang in the air when you talk to kids. They'll say a few words, like, I see God every afternoon. Oh, really? Yeah. But if you stop and keep looking at her and say, really? And just wait to see if anything else comes up. Okay, so what does that look like? And if you accept it, as I did, and not be judgmental and not be astonished and not do something to wave off her opening, boy, can you get gold coming out of those things and get insights. And that's one of the reasons it worked for me to deal with the kids 4 hours every Sunday for 8.5 years, because it was wondrously rich territory. And I learned so much from listening to them. I really did. First of all, they are so smart. Intuitively smart about relationships. Don't ever think, no matter how discreet you and your husband or whatever are being, about what you don't want them to know is going on. Trust me, they know. Yes,
that's absolutely true. You know, you can tell your passion for kids, and it was interesting that you said earlier that when you were first presented an opportunity to deal with kids and kids programming, it was like, okay, but it's amazing through your depth of experience and what you've gone through that you truly were one of the pioneers of all of these programs that we're seeing on TV now. You actually were part of a show called Candid Microphone.
Oh, yeah, well, that was a radio
Yes.
show. That was the forerunner of Candid Camera. I had just come out of college, and Alan Funt was just starting up that whole thing. And I happened to, I always kid, I said, well, he hired me because I was smart and bright and available, but I leave out the most important part, which is that my mother knew his mother. So I had known him earlier, but it just, again, another wonderful, collision of circumstances. I graduated college after I had a year and a half before I went to the Army, and after about 2 or 3 years, came back and did another year and a half and graduated, and I was still only 22 because my mother had pushed me ahead so far, right? So I called him up, and he said, okay, you ready to go to work? I said, yeah. So, I was hired as one of 4 people, Alan and 3 others, to do this radio half hour every week and to invent what became Candid Camera, but to invent it first on radio. And all the techniques and all the ideas and all that, we all had a hand in. I learned how to edit tape. I was probably the first audio editor of tape around. Well, actually, when we started Candid Microphone, it wasn't tape. It was wire. We were recording on wire, which was a German war invention. Now, okay, everybody stand by. I'm going to teach you how to edit wire. Lost art because we don't use wire, obviously. But his was the same principle of magnetizing wire to freeze the signals so you could replay them. But when you want to edit it, okay, so you had a scissor in your hand. You went to the first cut point and you cut the wire in 2. Now, the wire is very thin. You want to hold on to both ends tight, otherwise they make knots on themselves. And then you pull it through to the second end point and you cut there. Now, you take both ends of the wire and you tie it as tight as you can. Then you take the lighted end of the cigarette, take a deep inhale, so it's very hot, and then you weld the knot. And that's how you edit the wire. And the first few Candid microphones were done that way.
Unbelievable, Sonny. Sonny, I want to read part of your book. I want to read a part of your book that absolutely touched me. You're not going to believe this, Sonny, but you used to go on the field. You were a big fan of the New York Giants during Allie Sherman's days. And believe it or not, my dad got me on the field on Saturday mornings when Allie Sherman was the coach. An incredible coincidence that we have there. And actually, you and I were both out in Los Angeles at the same time. And I know a lot of the people that you were doing business with. But I have to read this from your book. I got to spend time on the sidelines during the game, attending practices and becoming friendly with their poor beleaguered coach, Allie Sherman. I won't read the whole thing. He said, but one evening we were dining together. He told me a story that made me aware of the unique power of TV in general and Wonderama in particular. His daughter was a loyal fan of the program. During the run-up to the drawing that would select a water boy or girl to be part of the team for one game, this is one of the awards that you guys gave out, we awarded 2 tickets each half hour, holding out the ultimate prize until late in the morning. Allie Sherman found out about this, and when his daughter came screaming to him with the joyous news that her friend had won 2 tickets and had invited his daughter to go with her to see the Giants. This was a young lady who could go to any game and sit in the owner's box. But the fact that the tickets came from Wonderama made them very, very special to her. What a great story.
That is a great story. And it does show the power, the special power of the association. And that's why I was in the book, because I was told the other story he told me too. Of course, Allie was manager when the team was losing, and the idea that he was going to be replaced became more and more obvious. And he told me that his kids would go to school and they would be taunted by their classmates. Here, your father's getting fired, But he said, the kids learned a valuable lesson. Life isn't just about winning. So, it was an interesting, little flashes like that sort of illuminate what you do in the studio and goes out for 4 hours, and then you go home. But then suddenly you begin to pick up all of the cadence. What's the word I'm even looking for? But the echoes of it as they rebound out there, And this is true. Well, listen, I don't want to keep you forever, and I'm delighted to have had a chance to talk with that lady from Tel Aviv. That's the most impressive thing of the day.
And I want people to know one thing, Sonny. You are how many years of age?
I'm older than you.
Yeah.
I'm older than most people. Oh, do we have to? Yeah, it's in the book. Why am I being so bloody coy? Last year I was 8. Well, let me start with last year. Last year I was 87. So I could use the words of Abraham Lincoln as intoned at Gettysburg in 1863 when he announced at that time that the United States was exactly the same age in Gettysburg that I was as I was last year. But now I'm a year older, so if you haven't figured out what 87 is, it's 1 year before 88.
And you are now 88 years old. And two things I want to tell you.
I didn't say that.
Sonny.
You said that. Yes, what?
That you sound as excited, as clear, robust about life as you did 50 years ago, Sonny. I give you so much credit for that. And another thing I want to tell you that your legacy is as great and as large as anyone that I know that I've ever spoken to because of all the great stuff that you've done, especially for us former kids that grew up with you. I'm going to take a moment to thank you. If I could give you a come through the wires and give you a hug, I would, for all the people that love you and adore you.
Thank you. And let me leave you with one quick thing for anybody who's intrigued or interested in the book. It is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Google. You can either download it as a Kindle or you can get it as a soft cover.
God bless you. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really hope that you'll come back again because
Bruce,
we didn't even touch on half the things that I want to talk about with you. So absolutely.
No, I think there are a lot of stories in there, like the quiz show scandals and Bobby Kennedy and a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
Next time.
Be pleased to do that at some time. Thank you for being such a gracious host and letting me wag my tongue so much.
Great to have you, Sonny, and I'll.
Okay. Thank you.